Thanks, man. Hey, everyone. It's always so good when I come to a Bitcoin conference and I can hear about people talking about feeding their cats and their goats in Bitcoin. I'm a proponent of this. I have done this many times with my kids, multiple times a week. We will get it on the TV. I'll AirPlay my computer on there. We'll go to Lightning Goats or whatever the website is bookmarked, and we pay 1,000 sats, so like $1.60, and we get to watch these goats get fed and then go nuts over who gets the last piece of food. And my 5-year-old, she's like quite empathetic. She's got lots of empathy, and she looks at these poor goats fighting, and she's like, "Oh no, these goats are fighting. This is so sad." And my 8-year-old son, who's maybe like too much like me and doesn't have a lot of that empathy stuff, he's always like, "Yeah, get him!" And he understands what it's like to fight to the death for the last piece of kibble or whatever comes out. So yeah, my name's Adam, and I'm the founder CEO of a company called Bitcoin Well. Our entire product exists to be able to help you keep Bitcoin in self-custody for as long as possible and be a conduit between your wallet and your bank account. And I was thinking about coming up here and talking about, self-custody, the most important thing that I think exists in Bitcoin. I think it's one of the single greatest differentiators that makes Bitcoin valuable money. Self-custody is the reason, or the inability to self-custody is the reason gold failed 100 years ago. It was too difficult to hold and divide gold, and so we started giving it to the powers that be, and well, look at where it got us. And so I was thinking about this and writing this, and despite what I believe, which is self-custody being the most important, or one of the most important aspects of Bitcoin, my heart wasn't in it. And it's because something I think greater and deeper has been on my heart and on my mind lately. So I'm going to rug pull this conversation. I'm going to flip the script a little bit. We're not going to talk about self-custody. We're going to talk about something that I think is actually deeper and more meaningful than self-custody. I was thinking and reflecting on this and about why we're all here. We think we've found this glimmer of hope, this spark of innovation in a monetary system. And I was thinking about how we got to where we are. Why do we as human beings need a glimmer of hope, this spark of innovation? Well, how did our monetary system get so royally messed up that we need Bitcoin? Why do we, how did we get here? And of course, it stems from 1971, divorcing the value from the money, taking the gold away from the dollar. And then I was reflecting on what life was like in the 70s. We're making right now a cool video. It's gonna be Bitcoin Well's first real good AI production. And it kind of goes through what life in the 70s was like. So this is where my brain has been a lot. And I was thinking about my grandfather, who was the producer in 1970, that generation. He was about my age in the 70s. And I was thinking about him raising then my father, who was raising my father on the principles of sound money. At that point in time, sound money or good money, valuable money, would have been still a big part of the system, or at least the value that it represents, right? We had 1971 where the money was in the cusp at the very, very beginning of just breaking. And then we go through a generation, and my dad grew up on a system of money that was broken, but the downstream effects of that hadn't quite set in yet. Then we have me, and I grew up for the first time, the first generation, from a parent who had those sound money values kind of instilled in him as myself, but I watched the world around me kind of continue to break as that great downstream effects of the problems of a broken money system. And then I was thinking about the next generation. You guys may have seen, I was here today and this weekend, my wife and our 4 kids have been here. If you didn't see them because you were in here learning, you definitely heard them, because my youngest son got the genes from me where he tries to compete with the microphones all the time. So he was ripping around screaming. So I apologize for that. And I was thinking about my children and thinking him or them and their peers are growing up for the first time from a generation. So I'm the one leading, and my generation has no concept of what actually living in a sound money environment looks like. And my kids are the first generation that are gonna grow up without any leadership of someone that did grow up, because my dad didn't also grow up in that sound money environment. So now we have completely societally divorced the value of money with the leadership of the world. And this sudden urge of urgency, panic set in, where I was like, oh my goodness, In 3 generations, we have gone from prosperity on the horizon, good things are gonna happen in the world, to like when you look at a 12 to 16-year-old kid right now, you just see despair. I was thinking about this afternoon, and I pulled up some stats that I thought were super alarming. So listen to this. 51% of the average Gen Z monthly budget is spent on housing. For my dad, it was 30% of his monthly budget was spent on housing. And you think to yourself, okay, that's like a significant improvement, but housing's an investment and hooray, hooray. When you think about using housing as money, I mean, you guys experienced this in Vancouver, it gets pretty ugly pretty quick. And so I'm not gonna dive into this too much. We don't have too much time, but I want all of us to set the stage on what that means. Half of why somebody works gets taxed, and then half that's left is spent on shelter. And it's not the shelter that I grew up in, it's shelter with other people. So we're already feeling this angst and this anxiety. And then this second one hit me over the head like a sack of bricks. 19% of Gen Z saves money. Less than 1 in 5 young people today are saving money. And the ones that do save openly admitted to the fact that they don't save for retirement. They save instead for things like travel, ironically housing, the thing that they're already spending half their income on, and vehicles, transportation, blah, 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 blah. And when I read that, I thought, these lazy kids are never gonna make it. But then I started maybe practicing my daughter's empathy a little bit, and I started thinking about why. And I started understanding that when you live in this fractured, broken monetary environment, it's very, very difficult to think about the future with prosperity. It's very, very difficult to see the future as something that has hope, or to think of yourself as someone that can provide value and be hope in that world. And so when you have a little bit of money left over at the end of the month, after you've paid the bureaucrats and after you've paid for your shelter and some overpriced Chipotle, once you're done all that, you can just dream of a vacation. You can dream of having a house that you can call home one day. And I found myself really concerned for what the future is gonna look like. If this generation doesn't have that, how are my grandkids gonna look? How are my great-grandkids going to look? And then this last one made a ton of sense to me all of a sudden, which is that less than half, 48% of Gen Z doesn't believe life will get any better. Just like, boom, hit me over the head. And so as I'm going through this, I'm thinking about this, I kind of was left feeling very discouraged, we failed as a society if the young people don't see themselves as prosperous or don't see themselves as having an advantage in the world. But then I started thinking about kind of globally what I've noticed as some trends. And I've seen that Gen Z is drinking less. So I noticed Gen Z typically drinks alcohol 33% less. So I thought, okay, what does that mean? That means they're at least conscious about how they respond, how their body's going to feel, how they're gonna be able to produce in the future. I saw they're also eating 18% more meat than the generation before. So that's good, right? More meat, more protein, more testosterone. This is good. This is what we know scientifically leads to a better society. And in my experience with these young people, more than ever, they are purpose-driven for what they want to do. Gen Z is the only generation right now leaving employment to go and try and change the world. They're scrappy, they're desperate, they're living in what they know to be despair, and they're trying to find something to do about it. And so what that led me to was kind of 3 things that we, as a group of Bitcoiners or early Bitcoiners, and I think the importance of this, because when I think about the next generation coming after this one, we are cooked as a society if they don't get it right. If we don't start instilling sound money values into our kids today, my grandkids aren't gonna survive. I think as a species, this is one of the most important things that we could possibly think about and do. And so the first thing I think we need to do is understand why this is so important. That's the majority of what I've just talked about. Why this is so important is because freedom matters. When we separate value, the value that we create with our time, from the money that we spend, when we financialize money to a certain extent, when we divorce it and remove it from the value that we create with our time, it becomes like this separate being. When you think about our time, it's quite intimate what we do with our time. All of you made the conscious decision to come here, spend your Sunday afternoon with us, talking and learning about Bitcoin. That's a very intimate decision. What you and your partner may do with your time in the evenings is also a very intimate decision. It's very connected to the world. It's very spiritual. You can tell a lot about a person, how they spend their time. And lots of that time is spent producing value. And we have completely removed that value from money. We just go around spending empty tokens that don't really mean much. And when we remove that value, the thing that we use to communicate as an economy and as a society, I don't think we have a good appreciation for each other's time. And when you don't appreciate the time that your neighbor spent to build the fence, when you don't appreciate the opportunity to repay and to thank somebody for the value that they have created with their time, the world gets a little bit darker. It gets even worse when you understand that somebody or something is stealing from you, but you can't really put a name or a number behind it. And when you can't identify the thing or the beings, the inflation, the whatever it may be, when you can't identify what is taking away your value, I think it becomes very easy to just blame everyone, right? We have to lock our doors at night because we're not safe. If you don't understand that there is the divorce of money and value is what's silently chipping away at all of our savings, at all of our prosperity down the future, we start to look at everyone as the criminal. So we understand why. And I think all of us, most of us in this room probably would agree with why that is so important, with why we need kind of value put back into the monetary system. But then, and this is where I think events like this are so important, we have to teach how to learn. I went to school, I had the privilege of going to an awesome school. I'm from Alberta, so I got a pretty good education. But I don't feel like I learned how to learn until very recently. I don't feel like I had the opportunity to think about first principles. Something I've been leading into, especially leading a business. You learn pretty quick that if you don't think about first principles, you're going to, die. But thinking about and learning from a first principle perspective, we have to teach that into our young people. If you're here as a young person, it doesn't matter what the history book says. It doesn't matter what the calculator says. You're going to be able to look at that up in 6 seconds down the road. What matters is that you've learned how to identify a problem and then actually learn the solution to that problem. The problem in 1971 wasn't that Bitcoin didn't exist, right? Bitcoin didn't come around for 50 years after that. The problem in 1971 is that our government decided we don't need real value to back money. This is a first principle problem. Anyone with a brain in their head should have been able to look at that and think to myself, hey, this first principle seems out of whack. This seems like an imbalance of power. This seems like an imbalance of value. And I think that something should be done about this. And that's what Satoshi ultimately did 50 years later. So we as a group, we understand why this is important. Then we understand that we have to teach how to learn. Because I promise you guys, what we teach the kids in 2025 will not be relevant in 2035. I've seen this in my life. I'm sure all of you have seen it in yours. I don't know if you ever tried talking to your grandma about Bitcoin, but it is over her head. She has no clue what I'm talking about when I talk about private and public key pairings and entropy and all this nonsense. She's like, yeah, I just learned about how to survive the war. And that was it. And something tells me that the kids of the future are going to be having similar thoughts. So we understand why we teach how to learn. And this last one, I think, is the most important thing, which is that we can lead by example. All of us in this room carry the great burden of leading the generation, the next generation, that is going to either set the rest 1,000 years of the species up for success or for failure. We are in this incredible moment of time where we've got a broken money system. We've got a financial ecosystem on the brink of collapse that has been propped up by debt and by printing. And I think that I'm 33 years old, as someone standing here in 2025 at 33, when I am 100 years old, the US dollar will not exist. There's no question in my mind about that. The financial economy is too broken for this to continue for 70 more years. And so we know in our lifetime, we're going to witness what will be historically the greatest transfer of wealth and the greatest transfer of value in the world. And so we are right now preparing for something. We are preparing to bring the next generation in that environment. And I think it is so, so important that we learn by example. And that's self-custody. It's understanding what Bitcoin is, why it's important, but it's also challenging. If you disagree with me, we have to be able to have this encouraging and confident conversation behind why that is important. And so I came up here with no notes and no clock, and I've done that lots before, and I always run over. I'm not sure where the time is at, but I really, really want to make sure that coming out of this event, you guys went through, you had the #1 teacher in Bitcoin up here on this stage telling you how to use Bitcoin. And that is so deeply important. But I think overarchingly, my call to action here is making sure that every single one of you understands what to do with that knowledge. Because taking it home and locking it away in your cupboard in case it comes in handy or to retire in 20 years, that's not the play. We've lost the plot if that's it. We are here on planet Earth to inspire and lead the next generation. And I cannot put enough emphasis on that we as a community learning about Bitcoin need to understand why that's important, need to teach the next generation how to learn. We ourselves have to learn how to learn, but teach the next generation how to learn, and then lead by example. So thank you so much, Learning Bitcoin 2025. I hope that all of you will learn more about Bitcoin, but more importantly, I hope that all of you will teach the next generation so that we have a shot as a society and as a species to continue into prosperity. Thanks, everyone.